Look at you, Elena, a disgrace. Is this how you serve my investors? Pathetic. Your incompetence is embarrassing.
Mr. Mercer, please, it was an accident.
An accident? You're a joke. Get out.
This is unfair. I work hard.
Work? This is failure.
Excuse me, sir. I think there is an error in your calculation. Harlan Mercer turned slowly. Apron stained, hands rough, skin black. A filthy black waitress correcting my math? He stood up. You people can barely spell your own names. I dare you. Solve it. $1 million if you can. I did not mean to offend. Shut your mouth. He stepped closer. Can you even read numbers? Or do they keep you around because you are cheap labor? Go scrub a toilet. That is your ceiling. Everyone laughed. Phones went up. No one said stop. Elena Brooks took this marker from his hand. The grin on Mercer's face would not last long. Not a single person in that room had any idea what was about to happen next. The Sterling was not a restaurant. It was a verdict. A place where Manhattan's financial elite came to remind each other and everyone beneath them exactly where the lines were drawn. Crystal chandeliers hung above tables dressed in white linen. The wine list started high. The waitstaff moved in silence, trained to be invisible. Elena Brooks had worked there for some time. She had been invisible her whole life. Her mother died when Elena was young. Ovarian cancer. No insurance. The hospital bills ate through everything, the apartment, the savings, even the furniture. Elena dropped out of school to work 2 jobs. Her younger sister, Maya, was still a child then. Someone had to keep her fed. Someone had to keep the lights on. So Elena carried plates. She mopped floors. She smiled through tips that barely covered rent in a small apartment in the Bronx. And every night after Maya fell asleep, Elena sat on the kitchen floor with a stack of library books. Calculus, linear algebra, probability theory, topology. She watched university lectures on a cracked phone screen until her eyes burned. She solved problems in a cheap notebook, filling it front to back, then flipping it upside down and starting again. No degree, no tutor, no classroom, just a mind that would not stop working. But no one at the Sterling knew any of that. To them, Elena was the quiet black girl who poured water and cleared plates. Nothing more. The head chef called her the ghost. The sommelier once told a guest she probably could not tell fine wine from boxed wine. She heard it. She always heard it. She never said a word. Tonight, the Sterling had been booked for a private event, an investor showcase hosted by Harlan Mercer, founder and CEO of Mercer Capital. He was worth billions. Wall Street called him the Hammer. Not because he built things, but because he crushed anyone who stood in his way. Hostile takeovers, gutted companies, careers destroyed over a handshake and a smile. Mercer had built his empire on one belief: intelligence was inherited, not earned. He said it in interviews. He wrote it in op-eds. He funded studies that tried to prove it. The quiet part, the part everyone understood but no one repeated on camera, was that he believed it most about people who looked like Elena. Tonight, dozens of investors filled the private dining room, hedge fund managers, venture capitalists, spouses of powerful people, a retired federal judge, the kind of crowd that measured people by net worth and zip code. Elena moved between them like a ghost, refilling glasses, replacing silverware, keeping her eyes low. Early in the evening, Mercer snapped his fingers at her without looking. You, black girl, more ice. Elena brought the ice. He did not say thank you. Minutes later, she reached across to clear a plate. Mercer pulled his napkin away from her hand. Do not touch my things, he said. I do not know where those hands have been. His guest laughed into his champagne glass. Elena said nothing. She stepped back. She kept moving. Mercer had set up a whiteboard near the head of the table. His presentation was the centerpiece of the evening. A proprietary risk assessment model his team of experts had spent a long time building. He called it the Oracle. He claimed it could predict market crashes with high accuracy. The investors leaned in. The champagne flowed. The numbers on the board multiplied, and the whole thing was being live streamed. 2 cameras, A tech crew from a financial media outlet. Mercer wanted the world to see his genius. He wanted the validation, the applause, the headlines. Elena carried a tray of hors d'oeuvres past the whiteboard. She was not supposed to look, but she did. And in that half second her eyes swept across the board, she saw it. A transposed variance coefficient in the third-tier equation. A small error. The kind most people would miss. The kind that would cascade through every projection and inflate returns by a significant margin. She kept walking, set the tray down, came back. It was still there. The wrong number. Sitting in the middle of Mercer's masterpiece, like a crack in a diamond. She should have stayed quiet. Every lesson her life had taught her said the same thing. Keep your head down. Do not make waves. Survive. But the number was wrong. And Elena Brooks could not walk past a wrong number. She stepped forward. "Excuse me, sir." That was when everything changed. The room had dozens of people in it. Not one of them expected what happened next. Elena stood a short distance from the whiteboard, her voice low but steady. The variance coefficient in the third-tier equation. It is transposed. The sigma and mu values are switched. Silence. The kind that presses against your ears. Mercer blinked. Then he laughed. A short, dry sound like a match striking. He looked around the room, waiting for his guests to join in. They did. A few chuckles, a shake of the head. One man muttered, "Is this a joke?" "Let me get this straight," Mercer said, turning to face her fully. He folded his arms. "You, a waitress who earns less in a year than I spend on shoes, are telling me that my team of experts from top universities got it wrong? I'm not talking about your team, sir. I'm talking about the number on the board. And what exactly qualifies you to talk about any number on any board?" He stepped closer. "Did you learn statistics while scrubbing pots? Did they teach probability between bussing tables?" A woman near the window shook her head and whispered to her husband, "The audacity." Her husband nodded. Someone should call her manager. Elena's hand was steady. Her voice did not waver. The transposition changes the tail risk projection. If the model runs with those values, it overestimates returns by a significant margin. Your investors would be making decisions based on inflated confidence intervals. The laughter stopped, not all at once. It drained out of the room the way color drains from a face. One investor, a silver-haired man in a navy suit, reached for his laptop. His fingers moved across the keyboard. He frowned. Then he looked up. He did not look at Mercer. He looked at Elena. Mercer saw it. The shift. He felt the room tilt, just slightly, just enough away from him. And that made it worse. That a black waitress had made his guests pause, even for a second, was something he could not forgive. "This is ridiculous." His voice was louder now, sharper. "You are a waitress. You do not get to walk up to a multi-billion-dollar presentation and pretend you understand what is on that board. You got lucky. You overheard something. That is all this is." "I did not overhear anything, sir. I read it." "You read it?" He repeated her words slowly, mockingly, turning to his audience. She read it. "Ladies and gentlemen, the dishwasher reads quantitative finance." More laughter, louder this time. Someone clapped twice. Then Mercer grabbed a marker from the tray beneath the whiteboard. He uncapped it and wrote a new equation. Longer, denser, layered with nested integrals and conditional probabilities. The kind of problem his quant team took days to model. He held the marker out to Elena. "Solve this, right now, in front of everyone." The room went still. Dozens of pairs of eyes locked onto the black waitress in the stained apron standing in front of a whiteboard full of numbers that most people in that room could not read. "And if you cannot," Mercer's voice dropped, "you walk out that door. No job. No reference. Nothing. You disappear and we never have to look at you again." Elena looked at the equation. She looked at the marker in his hand. She looked at the room, the phones, the cameras, the live stream light blinking red. Then she took the marker. "Okay," she said. Mercer smiled. The kind of smile that assumes the ending before the story is told. He turned to his guests, hands spread wide as if to say, Watch this. He had no idea what he had just started. Elena uncapped the marker. The smell of dry erase ink filled her nose. Sharp. Chemical. Familiar in a way no one in that room would understand. She had used markers like this 1,000 times, standing in front of bathroom mirrors in public libraries, working through equations on paper towels taped to the glass. She looked at the equation Mercer had written. It was layered. Nested integrals wrapped around conditional probability functions feeding into a Monte Carlo output matrix designed to intimidate, designed to make a person freeze. Elena did not freeze. She started at the top. Her handwriting was small, precise, nothing like the bold strokes Mercer had used. She did not explain what she was doing. She did not narrate. She just wrote. The room watched. Mercer leaned against the edge of a table, arms crossed, the smirk still carved into his face. He whispered to his CFO, loud enough for the front row to hear, $5 says she does not make it past the second line. Elena made it past the second line and the third and the fourth. She isolated the stochastic variable first, pulling it out of the nested integral and rewriting the boundary conditions. It was the kind of move that told you immediately whether someone understood the architecture of the problem or was just guessing. Elena was not guessing. She saw the structure the way a mechanic sees an engine. Not the noise, but the rhythm underneath. A young analyst at the second table leaned forward in his seat. He was watching Elena's hand move across the board, and his mouth was slightly open. He recognized what she was doing, a dimensional reduction technique he had only ever seen in graduate-level papers. He turned to the woman next to him. "That is not standard," he whispered. "That is elegant." The woman shushed him. Then Elena stopped. Her marker hovered over the third line. She tilted her head, read it again. Then she circled a small cluster of numbers near the bottom of Mercer's original equation. A decay constant buried inside a summation. "This is wrong," she said quietly. Mercer uncrossed his arms. "Excuse me?" "The decay constant." Elena tapped the board. "It is listed at 0.07, but the underlying asset class you are modeling, high-yield corporate bonds, has a historical default decay closer to 0.043. You have inflated the decay rate, which compresses the tail distribution and makes your model appear more stable than it actually is." Nobody in the room breathed. "In plain terms," Elena continued, still facing the board, "your model tells investors the risk is low, but it is not. It is hidden. And when the market corrects, and it will, the losses will not be around 15%. They will be closer to 38. She wrote the corrected number on the board, drew a line through Mercer's, then she kept solving. Mercer pushed off the table. "That number was verified by my entire research division. Dozens of experts. You are telling me you know better than all of them?" Elena did not turn around. "I am telling you the number is wrong, sir." "Based on what, your waitressing degree?" He looked at his guests for support. A few smiled, but fewer than before. The room was shifting, and Mercer could feel it, like sand moving under his feet. The silver-haired investor, the one who had checked his laptop earlier, stood up. His name was Richard Langford. He managed billions in pension funds. He walked to the whiteboard, adjusted his glasses, and followed Elena's math line by line. 30 seconds passed. A minute. Langford traced her work with his finger, pausing at each correction. Then he turned to Mercer. "She is right. 2 words." They hit the room like a brick through glass. Murmurs broke out. A woman in pearls set down her champagne and picked up her phone. 2 investors at the back table exchanged a glance. The kind that says we need to talk about our money. Mercer's jaw tightened. The smirk was gone. "That is one error," he said. His voice was clipped, strained. "One. Anyone can find one mistake if they stare at a board long enough. It is not one error, sir." Elena was still writing. She had not turned around. The inflated decay constant feeds into your correlation matrix on the second panel. That skews the copula function, which means your joint default probabilities are off by a significant factor. Every downstream projection in your model inherits that bias. She drew 3 arrows, connecting the cascade from the decay constant to the correlation matrix to the final output. Each arrow pointed to a different wrong number. Each wrong number had a circle around it. The board looked like a crime scene. She finished the last line, capped the marker, turned around. The whiteboard behind her was covered in her handwriting, clean, methodical, devastating. Every correction was circled, every flawed assumption was annotated. It looked like an autopsy of a multi-billion-dollar reputation. Langford sat back down. He closed his laptop. He did not need it anymore. A murmur rippled through the room. Not laughter this time, the sound people make when they realize they have been watching the wrong person. Mercer stood very still. His face had gone from red to pale. The live stream cameras were still rolling, hundreds of thousands of viewers online. The number had climbed since the confrontation began. Comments were flooding in. The hashtag was already forming. Hashtag waitress versus billionaire. Lucky guess, Mercer said. But the words came out thin, hollow, like a door slamming in an empty house. Elena set the marker down on the tray. She did not argue. She did not gloat. She stood there, apron stained, hands chalked with blue ink, eyes steady, and let the board speak for itself. One investor near the back pulled out his phone and began typing. Another leaned over to his colleague and whispered, "Who the hell is she?" Nobody had an answer. But everyone in that room, every single one, had stopped laughing. Mercer should have let it go. He should have smiled, congratulated the waitress, called it a party trick, and moved on. That is what a smart man would have done. Harlan Mercer was not a smart man. He was a proud one. One equation does not make you a genius, he said. He was standing now, jacket unbuttoned, hands flat on the table. The ease was gone from his posture. Something harder had taken its place. Any grad student with a textbook could have caught that. You want to prove something? Fine. Let us really see what you have got. He turned to his CFO, a thin man named Philip Crane, and snapped his fingers. Bring up the oracle. The full model, every layer. Crane hesitated. Harlan, that is proprietary. We do not. Bring it up. Crane opened his laptop and connected it to the projector. The screen beside the whiteboard filled with numbers. Many pages of interconnected equations, risk matrices, probability trees, and stress test scenarios. The Oracle. Mercer Capital's crown jewel. A long time of work by a team of experts. The model that was supposed to make Mercer the most trusted name in quantitative finance. Here's the deal, Mercer said, turning back to Elena. His voice carried the weight of a man who believed he was about to end a conversation permanently. You walk through my entire model, every layer, every assumption. You find the errors, if there are any, and you present them, right here, in front of my investors, on camera. He paused. Let the silence build. You get it right, all of it. I will write you a check for $5 million, right here, tonight. The room gasped. An actual audible intake of breath from dozens of people at the same time. But if you are wrong, Mercer continued, stepping closer, even once, even on a single decimal, you get on your knees and apologize to me in front of everyone. You tell this room you're a fraud. You tell the cameras, and then you leave. Permanently. A man at one of the tables shook his head and muttered, "Just let the girl go home. This is cruel." The woman beside him laughed. Cruel? It is entertainment. She walked into this. Another investor raised his glass. 5 million, says she cries before page 3. Elena looked at the projection. Many pages. Stochastic calculus layered with Bayesian inference. Copula dependencies feeding into tail risk simulations that most quant desks would need significant time to audit. This was not a party trick anymore. This was a war. She looked at Mercer. His eyes were bright with the certainty of a man who believed he had just set a trap no waitress could survive. 5 million, Elena said. 5 million. And the cameras stay on? Mercer spread his hands. The whole world gets to watch. Elena nodded slowly. She looked at the projection one more time. Then she looked back at Mercer. I will need a bigger whiteboard. The room erupted. Not in laughter, in noise. Chairs scraped. Phones came out again. Someone in the back shouted, "This is insane!" A producer from the media crew spoke into his headset. "Keep every camera rolling. Do not cut." The live stream counter jumped. Hundreds of thousands, then more. The comments were scrolling so fast they blurred. Hashtag waitress was billionaire was now the #1 trend on every platform. Mercer's team wheeled in a second whiteboard, then a third. They lined them up side by side. Long stretches of blank white surface, waiting for ink. Elena stood in front of them, marker in hand, the projected model glowing beside her. She was a young black waitress in a stained apron standing in the most expensive private dining room in Manhattan about to audit a multi-billion-dollar hedge fund's risk model in front of hundreds of thousands of people. And she was not shaken, not even a little. Mercer leaned over to Crane. "This will be over in 10 minutes. She will choke." Crane did not answer. He was watching Elena's eyes. They were moving across the projection, fast, systematic, absorbing. He had seen that look before, on the best quants in the building, the ones who could read a data set the way a conductor reads a score. He had never seen it on someone who had not been to college. "Harlan," Crane said quietly, "I think we might have a problem." Mercer ignored him. Elena started with the first page. She read the projection line by line, her eyes scanning left to right, top to bottom, the way most people read a novel. Most people read. But Elena was not reading. She was deconstructing. Each equation was a wall, and she was looking for the bricks that did not fit. The room was quiet. Not the polite quiet of a dinner party. The tense quiet of a courtroom waiting for a verdict. She picked up the marker and wrote on the first whiteboard. A clean rederivation of the model's base assumptions. The interest rate inputs. The volatility surface. The correlation structure. She worked fast, but not rushed. Every line followed the last like links in a chain. No gaps, no hesitations. Page 1. Clean. No errors. She moved to page 2. Mercer watched from the head of the table, arms crossed, chin up. He turned to a guest, a venture capitalist named Douglas Hale, and said loud enough for the room, "She is stalling. Buying time. Watch. She will start making things up soon." Hale nodded, but his eyes stayed on the whiteboard. Page 2. Elena flagged a minor inconsistency in the volatility smile calibration. She corrected it in a few lines. Not a fatal error. A rounding shortcut that Mercer's team had taken to save processing time, but it introduced a small bias. She noted it, circled it, and moved on. Page 3. Clean. Page 4. Another shortcut. This one in the correlation matrix. A simplification that assumed static pairwise correlations when the underlying assets were dynamic. Elena rewrote the block using a time-varying copula. It took her a few minutes. The young analyst from earlier, the one who had recognized her technique, was now sitting at the edge of his seat, his dinner untouched, his mouth slightly open. Mercer shifted in his chair. He uncrossed his arms, crossed them again, reached for his water, put it down without drinking. Page 5. Elena stopped. She tapped the board twice with the back of her marker. Then she turned to the projection and pointed at a cluster of parameters near the bottom of the page. "This section uses a Gaussian copula to model joint default risk," she said. "But the underlying data set includes high-yield bonds from the financial crisis period. The Gaussian copula famously failed during that period because it underestimates tail dependence. Your model is using a tool that already broke once in exactly the conditions it is supposed to predict." She did not wait for a response. She wrote the correction, a Clayton copula with adjusted tail parameters, and showed how the risk profile changed. The difference was significant. Under Mercer's model, the probability of a simultaneous default event was low. Under Elena's correction, it was substantially higher. Langford stood up again. He did not walk to the board this time. He did not need to. He turned to the investor beside him and said, "Clearly, I am pulling my allocation first thing next week." The words spread through the room like fire through paper. Two more investors reached for their phones. One woman closed her portfolio binder and slid it into her bag. Mercer felt it. His jaw tightened. He stood up and walked to Elena. "You are cherry-picking," he said. "You are finding minor issues and blowing them up to look smart. The core model is sound." Elena did not argue. She turned back to the projection and moved to page 6. Then Mercer played dirty. He walked to Crane and whispered something. Crane hesitated, then typed on his laptop. The projection flickered. When it came back, the layout had changed. Pages had been reordered, and 2 sections Elena had already reviewed were swapped with new ones she had not seen. The parameters looked different. The notation had shifted. They were changing the model while she was auditing it. Elena stared at the screen. Her marker hand paused. For the first time all evening, her rhythm broke. She blinked, looked at the whiteboard where her previous corrections sat, looked back at the screen. The numbers did not match anymore. A murmur went through the crowd. Mercer smiled, wide, full of teeth. "Problem?" he said. "I thought you were a genius." Elena closed her eyes. 3 seconds. 4. When she opened them, she started from the top of the rearranged page. She did not complain. She did not call it unfair. She rebuilt her frame of reference from scratch, tracing the new layout back to the original architecture she had already mapped in her head. It cost her several minutes she did not have. Pages 6 and 7 restructured, clean. Elena noted them as structurally sound and moved on. She was not performing, she was not showboating, she was auditing. Methodically, relentlessly, without emotion. That made it worse for Mercer. If she had been arrogant, he could have attacked her character. If she had been wrong, he could have attacked her math. But she was quiet. And she was right. And he had no weapon for that. Page 8. Elena found the third significant error. A bootstrap resampling procedure that used overlapping windows, introducing autocorrelation into the confidence intervals. She corrected it. The model's claimed high accuracy dropped significantly. Mercer's face went white. Crane leaned over and whispered, "Harlan, we should stop this. Now." "No." Mercer's voice was a blade. "She finishes. And when she makes a mistake, one mistake, it is over." But Elena was not making mistakes. She was moving through the model like water through a cracked dam, finding every gap, every weakness, every assumption that had been left unchecked because no one on Mercer's team had thought to question them. Or maybe they had, and they had been too afraid to speak up. Pages 9 through 12 went faster. Elena's rhythm was locked in now. Scan. Identify. Correct. Move. She filled the second whiteboard, started on the third. Her handwriting stayed small and precise. Her breathing stayed even. The markers squeaked against the board in a rhythm that had become the only sound in the room. The live stream had crossed 1 million viewers. The hashtag had spawned others. Hashtag mathgenius. Hashtag the waitress who knew. Hashtag Harrington exposed. News outlets were picking it up. A major anchor tweeted, "Is anyone else watching this live stream? This waitress is dismantling a billionaire's entire model in real time." Mercer sat down. He did not announce it. He did not make a statement. He just sat. The fight was draining out of him, and everyone in the room could see it, the way you can see a balloon losing air slowly, silently, until there is nothing left but wrinkled skin. Elena reached page 13, then 14, then 15. She was more than halfway through, and she had not been wrong once. The clock on the wall showed significant time had passed. Mercer had given her a set window. Little time left. Several pages to go. Elena looked at the clock, looked at the board, and kept writing. Page 16. Little time left. Elena's marker moved across the third whiteboard, filling the last empty space in the upper corner. She was almost through. Almost done. And then she stopped. Not a pause. A full stop. The kind where your hand freezes and your eyes narrow, and something cold slides down your spine. She stepped back from the board and looked at the projection, looked at her own corrections, then looked at page 16 again. Something was wrong. Not with her math. with the problem itself. She turned to Mercer. Where did the data on page 16 come from? Mercer raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? It came from the model, same as every other page. No. Elena shook her head slowly. It did not. The variant structure on this page does not match the rest of the model. The base parameters are different. The boundary conditions are incompatible with pages 14 and 15. She pointed at a line of numbers near the bottom of the projection. This page was written separately, and the convergence constant right here has been manually overridden. Someone changed it from one value to another. The room went cold. That override makes the system of equations on this page unsolvable, Elena said. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were not. There is no valid output. You can run it 1,000 times and it will never converge. This page was designed to fail. Silence, the kind that rings in your ears. Elena turned to face Mercer directly. You gave me a rig test. Mercer did not flinch, but he did not speak either. His fingers curled around the edge of his chair. Crane, sitting beside him, closed his eyes and exhaled through his nose. The slow breath of a man watching a building collapse from the inside. The live stream comments exploded. The word rigged appeared 1,000 times in seconds. Hashtag rigged test began trending before Elena finished her sentence. Viewers were screenshotting the override, tagging regulators, tagging journalists. But Elena was not done. She turned back to the board, picked up the marker, and in the next minute and a half, she did something no one in that room expected. She reversed the override, restored the original constant, rebuilt the convergence pathway from scratch, and solved the equation that was never meant to be solved. She capped the marker, set it down gently on the tray. Page 16, she said. Done. The clock on the wall showed she had finished with seconds to spare. Mercer stared at the board. His mouth opened. Nothing came out. For the first time all evening, Harlan Mercer had absolutely nothing to say. The applause had not even started when Mercer stood up. She cheated. The words landed like a slap. The room, which had been tilting toward Elena for the last stretch of time, froze. She cheated, Mercer repeated, louder now. He pointed at Elena. There is no way on this earth that a waitress with no degree, no training, no credentials of any kind walks in here and audits a model built by a team of experts. She had access to the system beforehand. Someone on my team leaked it. He turned to Crane. Find out who. Crane opened his mouth, then closed it. He looked like a man who had been asked to find a fire exit on a sinking ship. Mercer turned to the room. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for this circus. What you just witnessed was not genius. It was theft. Corporate espionage. And I will be pressing charges. The murmurs returned, but this time they were different. Uncertain. A few investors nodded. A few more looked at Elena with narrowed eyes. The narrative was shifting, not because Mercer's accusation made sense, but because the alternative was too uncomfortable. If Elena was real, if she was telling the truth, then every person in that room had watched a brilliant woman be humiliated for a long stretch of time and done nothing. It was easier to believe she cheated. The restaurant manager appeared. His name was Victor Lang. He was a tall man with thin lips and a permanent expression of controlled panic. He walked straight to Elena. Miss Brooks, I need you to step away from the presentation area. I did not cheat, Elena said. That is not for me to decide. Lang's voice was low, professional, final. Mr. Mercer is our guest. This is his event. I need you to collect your things and leave the premises tonight. You are firing me? Lang did not answer, which was an answer. Elena stood in the middle of the room, 3 whiteboards behind her covered in her handwriting. A projection screen glowing with a model she had just dismantled. Hundreds of thousands of viewers watching on a screen she could not see. And now she was being told to leave, not because she was wrong, but because she was right. And the wrong person did not like it. She looked at the faces around her, the investors who had laughed at her, the ones who had filmed her, the ones who had whispered the audacity in 5 million says she cries. Not one of them spoke up. Not one of them said, wait, let her stay. She earned this. The loneliest place in the world is a room full of people who know you are right and choose to say nothing. Elena's hand trembled, not from fear, from the weight of it. The weight of being brilliant and black and broke and standing in a room that would rather call her a criminal than admit she was smarter than the richest man at the table. She thought about Maya watching at home, still a teenager, sitting cross-legged on the couch, seeing her sister get thrown out on a live stream. What would Maya learn from this? That talent does not matter? That the truth does not matter? That no matter how good you are, someone with enough money can make you disappear? Elena picked up her apron from the chair where she had set it down. She folded it neatly, held it in both hands, then she put it back on. "I did not cheat," she said again, quieter this time. Not to Mercer, not to Lang, to the cameras, to the hundreds of thousands of people watching, to Maya. And I can prove it. She turned back to the whiteboard. "Give me a new problem. Any problem. One I have never seen. Let someone in this room choose it, and I will solve it right here, right now, with nothing but this marker." The room held its breath. For 3 seconds, no one moved. Then a voice came from the back of the room. Calm. Clear. The kind of voice that did not need volume to command attention. "I will give her one." Every head turned. A woman stood up from the last table. Silver hair pulled back, no jewelry. A plain black blazer over a white shirt. She looked like she had wandered in from a university lecture hall, which, in a way, she had. Her name was Dr. Vivian Hale, professor of applied mathematics at a top university, Fields Medal nominee, author of multiple papers that had reshaped how the world understood topological data analysis. She had been invited tonight as a courtesy. Mercer liked to surround himself with credentialed names. She had not said a word all evening until now. Dr. Hale walked to the whiteboard. She moved slowly, deliberately, the way someone handles something fragile. She picked up a marker, a red one, and began to write. The equation she put on the board was nothing like what Mercer had written. It was sparse, elegant, deceptively short. 3 lines of notation that looked almost simple until you understood what they were asking. It was a problem in persistent homology, a branch of topology that studies the shape of data across multiple dimensions. Specifically, it asked for a closed-form stability bound on a filtration of simplicial complexes under perturbation. Dr. Hale's own research group had been working on this problem for a significant time. They had published partial results. They had not solved it. No one had not. Dr. Hale capped the marker and turned to Elena. "Take as long as you need," she said. No condescension, no spectacle, just one mathematician speaking to another. Elena looked at the board. She read the notation once, twice. Her lips moved slightly, the way they did when she was mapping a problem's architecture in her head, finding the walls, the doors, the hidden rooms. The room was silent. The live stream had crossed 2 million viewers. No one typed in the chat. No one scrolled. 2 million people held their breath at the same time. Elena picked up the blue marker. She started at the top left corner of the clean whiteboard, the one Mercer's team had wheeled in and never expected to be used. Her handwriting was different now, not the small, precise script she had used during the audit. This was larger, bolder, like she was writing for the room to see, like she wanted them to follow. She began with the filtration structure, defining the nested sequence of simplicial complexes and establishing the inclusion maps between them. Standard setup. Textbook. But then she did something unexpected. Instead of attacking the stability bound directly, the way every researcher had tried, she reframed the problem. She introduced a secondary metric space, mapped the filtration into it using a Lipschitz continuous function, and showed that the stability question in the original space was equivalent to a contraction mapping problem in the new one. It was a lateral move. The kind of insight that does not come from studying. It comes from seeing. From a mind that does not just process mathematics, but dreams in it. Dr. Hale's hand went to her mouth. Elena kept writing. She derived the contraction bound, showed it was uniform across the filtration, and used it to establish the stability inequality in 4 clean steps. No leaps, no hand-waving. Every line followed from the last with the inevitability of gravity. The young analyst, the one who had recognized her technique earlier, stood up. He was not the only one. 3 more people rose to their feet, craning their necks to see the board. A woman in the front row put both hands flat on the table as if steadying herself. Significant time passed. Elena wrote the final line. A single inequality. The stability bound. Explicit. Closed form. Sharp. She underlined it twice. Then she set the marker down. She did not turn around. She stood facing the board, breathing. The ink was still drying. The room was so quiet you could hear the ventilation system humming through the ceiling. Dr. Hale walked to the board. She adjusted her glasses. She followed Elena's proof from the first line to the last, her finger tracing each step the way a jeweler examines a stone. Slowly, carefully, looking for the flaw that would change everything. She reached the final line, stopped, read it again, then she turned to face the room. This is correct. 2 words. But the way she said them softly with something trembling underneath made them sound like a cathedral bell. This is not only correct, Dr. Hale continued. Her voice was steady, but her hands were not. This is a novel proof. This approach, the metric space reduction, has never been published. It solves a problem that my department has worked on for a significant time. She paused, swallowed. I have colleagues who have spent their entire careers trying to find this bound. She turned to Elena. Where did you study? I did not, Elena said. The silence that followed was the loudest thing that had happened all night. Then the room broke. It started with the young analyst. He clapped once, twice, 3 times. Then the woman in the front row joined, then Langford, then 3 more, then 10, then everyone. Dozens of people standing, applauding, some with their hands pressed together hard enough to whiten their knuckles. One woman was crying. She did not wipe her eyes. She just stood there clapping, tears running down her cheeks, looking at a waitress in a stained apron who had just done something impossible. The live stream chat was a wall of fire. 2 million messages in a minute, heart emojis, crying emojis. Who is she? Repeated 1,000 times. Hashtag #MathGenius was now trending in multiple countries. Elena stood in front of the whiteboard, blue ink on her fingers, the apron still tied around her waist. Her eyes were wet. But she was not crying. She was breathing, just breathing. She turned and looked at Mercer. He was sitting in his chair, hands in his lap, face gray. His mouth was a thin, flat line. The grin was gone. The swagger was gone. The multi-billion-dollar certainty that had carried him through every room he had ever entered. Gone. Elena did not say anything cruel. She did not gloat. She did not need to. She looked him in the eye and said quietly, "You asked me if I could count past the number of plates I carry." She glanced at the board behind her. 3 whiteboards covered edge to edge in her handwriting. I can. The applause was still going when Dr. Hale raised her hand. The room quieted. Not because she demanded it, but because when Vivian Hale wanted to speak, people listened. I want to make something clear, she said. She was standing beside Elena now, facing the room, facing the cameras. What this young woman just demonstrated is not a party trick. It is not a lucky guess. It is not something you learn by reading a few textbooks. She paused. Let the words settle. She just produced a novel proof to an open problem in algebraic topology. A problem that has resisted solution by some of the best mathematicians in the world, including me. She turned to Elena. I'm offering you a full scholarship to my university, effective immediately. Full tuition, housing, research, stipend. You will join my lab as a graduate researcher. Elena's hand went to her mouth. She did not speak. She could not. The room erupted again, louder this time, messier. The kind of noise that happens when people stop being polite and start being human. The young analyst was on his feet, fist in the air. Langford was nodding, his jaw tight, his eyes red. The woman who had been crying clapped harder. But the night was not done with Harlan Mercer. A man in a dark suit stood up from one of the tables. His name was Dominic Shaw, securities attorney. He had been quiet all evening, watching, noting, recording. "Mr. Mercer," Shaw said, his voice cutting through the noise like a scalpel, "you made a public wager on a live stream in front of millions of viewers. You offered $5 million if this woman could identify the errors in your model. She did. She also proved that page 16 was deliberately altered to produce a false negative, which, I should note, raises serious questions about investor disclosures." The room went quiet. A different kind of quiet now, the legal kind. "The wager is binding," Shaw continued. "I would recommend you honor it tonight on camera before this becomes something significantly more expensive than $5 million. Mercer looked at Shaw. He looked at the cameras. He looked at the millions of people watching him from the other side of a lens. Then he reached into his jacket and pulled out a checkbook. Mercer wrote the check in silence. $5 million. His dollars. His hand was steady, but his jaw was not. He tore it from the book and held it out without looking at her. Elena took it, folded it once, slipped it into her apron pocket, the same pocket where she kept her order pad and her cheap pen. "I underestimated you," Mercer said. It was not an apology. It was not enough. But it was the first honest thing he had said all night. "Most people do," Elena said. She untied her apron and set it on the table where she had served drinks hours earlier. Then she walked toward the door. Langford intercepted her. He handed her his card. "Call me next week. I fund scholarships, real ones, not bets." Behind him, two more investors approached, cards out, hands extended, faces nothing like the ones that had laughed earlier. Dr. Hale was already on the phone with her department chair. The live stream ended at millions of viewers. The clip of Elena saying, "I did not," when asked where she studied, was viewed tens of millions of times in a day. It was shared by professors, athletes, news anchors, and a teenager in the Bronx who posted it with one word: "That is my sister." In the months that followed, Elena Brooks sat in a lecture hall at a top university. Front row. Her first paper on stability bounds and persistent homology was accepted by a leading mathematics journal. The reviewers called it a landmark contribution. She still carried a cheap notebook, but the kitchen floor was gone. The cracked phone was gone. The apron was gone. Some people wait their whole lives for the world to see them. Elena Brooks did not wait. She picked up a marker and made them look. I told you this story because I think about it a lot. How many Elenas are out there right now? Carrying plates, mopping floors, solving equations nobody will ever see. Talent does not care about your zip code or your skin color. If this story made you feel something, share it. Someone out there needs to hear it today. If Elena's story moved you, drop a comment. Tell me about a time someone underestimated you. Share this with someone who needs it. And if you have not already, subscribe. Stories like this deserve to be told. Hashtag justice for Elena. Hashtag math genius. Hashtag waitress versus billionaire. I told you this story because I think about it a lot. How many Elenas are out there right now carrying plates, mopping floors, solving equations nobody will ever see? Talent does not care about your zip code or your skin color. If this story made you feel something, share it. Someone out there needs to hear it today.